What's going on, everyone? It is the Derf, and today I am bringing you an absolutely absurd build that centers around stasis and shattering targets, dealing huge amounts of area damage while also using your super in a little bit of a different way. If you guys have been missing the use of stasis since last season, look no further. I'm going to show you how to bring it back and arguably more powerful than it's ever been. Huge amounts of super regen, tons of transcendence energy, the ability to get your super back in 30 seconds, looking extremely cool while doing it. And oh, by the way, you're going to be a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield, helping your allies achieve victory. So guys, if you guys have been looking for the ability to use stasis all over again and take advantage of the artifact, this is the build for you. This is extremely potent. Let's go. I'm going to show you how to do it. Saw in that intro clip, 11 million in damage was done, and as you could see, my two teammates were no slouches. They both had considerably more kills than I did. How do we do it? We're going to go through it right now. Our super of choice is going to be completely up to you. It's going to be either Winter's Wrath or Storm Trance. It's just going to depend on what you want as a buff when you pick up your orbs of power. So with Winter's Wrath, of course, you get the frost armor, and with Storm Trance, of course, you get the jolting effect when you cast it, even though we're not going to be using our supers like normal, but you'll get bolt charge when you pick up that orb of power. So you just have to decide which one you want. Frost armor is nice if you're going into really sweaty activity, but picking up bolt charge is nice to being able to take advantage of artifact perks like dielectric. So it really just depends on what you pick, but it has to be one of these two roaming supers. For abilities, we're going to be going with Phoenix Dive, Burst Glide, Arcane Needle, and the Cold Snap Grenade. Now, the Cold Snap Grenade doesn't typically make the bank for most Guardians builds. However, our goal here is to be able to freeze targets on command. With the Cold Snap Grenade, especially if you're running things like Court of Blades, when those bosses spawn, typically they spawn enemies around them as well. The Cold Snap Grenade is nice because you can freeze all of them in a group and then deal damage getting them out of your way sooner rather than later, or trying to dance around the boss, or maybe that champ who's got some minions around them. The Cold Snap works very well here. For aspects, you've got your choice on the first one. Weaver's Call is very nice because of the artifact, your ability to use threadlings with increased power, and of course generating tangles and those things. That's a really great one to have on, and it's typically what I prefer with this. Your other option is Lightning Surge. Both of them come with 3 fragment slots, but it's really going to depend if you want to have more of a melee heavy style, or if you want to be able to spam your class ability to generate threadlings. Either way, you can't go wrong. Lightning Surge, of course, you get the bolt charge, and then the threadlings, generate tangles and all those things, and cause severe area damage and tick damage as well. So just depends on what you want to do. Next up, we're going to have Feed the Void. Of course, we want our grenade to generate as much as possible, but given that we're either going to be getting frost armor and or bolt charge, you want to be able to have a way to gain additional health, especially if you're running in the Nether arena. That's going to be key since health is at a premium. But health is always nice just in general, no matter what kind of content you're running, if you're being more aggressive like what this build is going to sort of call for. For fragments, first up on the list is going to be Facet of Purpose. Picking up an Orb of Power grants either Bolt Charge, Restoration, Frost Armor, Woven Mail, or Overshield based on the damage type of your equipped super. If you pick the Arc super, you're going to be getting Bolt Charge, and then once you receive stacks of Bolt Charge, it grants you melee energy. If you do the Stasis super, you're fortified by layers of durable stasis matter, reducing incoming damage. Frost armor damage resistance grows stronger as you gain additional stacks. This is particularly useful in sweatier content, or possibly even busier content, if you're not necessarily seeing a lot of red bars, but most of the enemies that you're coming across are going to be tankier than normal, thinking like things like Warlord's Ruin or activities like that, where yes, they are red bars or weaker yellow bars, but they're still tankier and require a little bit of more focus than, say, just a general strike. Next up, we're going to be using Facet of Balance. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. You're going to be spamming your melee a lot in this to generate additional tick damage and, of course, those tangles. So whichever way you go, you're going to be able to deal additional damage and then get it back right away, which is what we want. Next up, we're going to be running with Facet of Sacrifice. When you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability Final Blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. So this is a way to get extra Darkness Transcendence energy back without really having to do much. You're going to be proccing Devour often, and that does count as a light buff, or excuse me, a Void buff. Next up, we're going to be having Facet of Awakening. Rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. So we're going to get into this a little bit later when we go over the artifact, but either way, whether you are going to be generating fire sprites, stasis shards, either way, you're going to be getting melee energy or grenade energy back, and getting your melee or grenade is only going to further the decimation that you are going to be able to cause to the enemies of the Traveler. Last but not least is going to be Facet of Ruin. Increases the size and damage of the burst when you shatter a stasis crystal or frozen target, and increases the area of effect of solar ignitions. So the plus 10 to mobility, I don't care about. However, the ability to increase the burst when I shatter a frozen target or just a target in general and my solar ignitions is worth the 5th slot here. Now, if you do find yourself in a situation where you're having trouble dealing with barrier champs, because we're going to get into this a little bit later anyways, you could theoretically swap this out for Facet of Dawn so that you can proc yourself Radiant. If you do that, though, you're going to have to remod your armor a little bit to make sure you're not dipping too below the target spectrum of where you want to be. So however you guys feel, maybe go farm some engrams and go over to failsafe and do what you got to do. Focus your stats a little bit better to make sure you can equip for whatever the activity calls for. Just do whatever you got to do to try to mitigate the, dipping below a certain amount of stat in your armor slots. Speaking of armors, we're going to go through real quick here. You want to focus resilience as high as possible, preferably a T10, and your discipline, preferably at a T8 or above. Your third stat to worry about a little bit is going to be strength. However, because we're going to mainly be using a light energy add clear weapon, it's not absolutely imperative that you focus this up to a T10. However, if you are lucky enough to get triple 10s or 2 9s and a 10, however you guys can do it, either way, it's going to help you immensely. But don't feel like if you're only at, like you see me, I'm at a T7 for strength. I'm not hurting for melee energy, and my discipline at T9 is, near perfect. You're only shaving off a couple extra seconds to get to that 10, so make sure you get that extra damage resistance in your resilience above all else. All right, for weapons, we're going to go through everything you see on the screen, and then I'm going to go over some substitutes. Our main star of the show is going to be Aegir Scepter, exotic trace rifle, stasis type. Its trait, Rhaega's Refrain. Stasis final blows transfer ammo to those weapons magazines from reserves. And the call, final blows with this weapon generate a slow burst around the defeated target. If you've ever used this weapon before, you're going to know how powerful it is off the bat. Of course, we just went through a stasis heavy season not even that long ago. But stasis is by no means dead, and there's a couple of artifact perks we're going to be able to take huge advantage of that you may not even know dramatically affect how this weapon behaves. Once you unlock the catalyst, when your super energy is full, you long press reload, you drain super energy, overflowing the magazine and empowering the beam with bonus damage and the ability to slow and freeze targets until the magazine or super energy runs out or the weapon is stowed. Can only be activated when super energy is full. So with this weapon here, we're actually not going to be using our super in the super capacity that it was made for. Instead, we're going to be consuming our super and just unloading this weapon into preferably bosses and or very, very difficult champs. And I say very, very difficult because if you're not in front of a difficult champ, you don't really need to use this in its empowered state. But for bosses, this was exactly what I used when you saw that 11 mil pop across your screen. And again, my teammates in that were not slouches. I was just using this weapon plus a little bit from the artifact and just going to town. And I'm going to show you how you can get super after super after super so that you can have this when you have back-to-back bosses like, for example, Court of Blades. In the energy slot, I heavily recommend Callus Mini Tool for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is a 900 RPM weapon, so the ability to generate your super energy, since it is a roaming super, is going to be extremely high, but also because it is a solar weapon that can spread incandescent, and it can spread it quickly. And you also move faster, which means if you elect to not go with your Storm Transforming Super, you can still move around the battlefield faster, and if you're lugging around an auto rifle or something else, that's going to make you move a little bit slower. But if you've not gotten the Callus Mini Tool, and again, this isn't a tool that's going to be foreign to most, but for those who have not done exotic missions that you see in the Legends tab, start doing them. Get your red borders, claim your red borders, and eventually craft this tool into just an absolute madman of a weapon. Very fun to use, very easy to control, and I know you see the range sitting there at a 33. Don't even worry about that. You're going to be mowing enemies down. I routinely use this thing on yellow bars, even with all of the nerfs that Solar's gotten over the years and things like that. This thing still puts in work, and it's extremely easy to control. If you are worried about other things or wondering what other weapons you could use instead of Callus, if you want to run double special, you can run a Baron Action. This will negate the need for you to put Facet of Dawn on. You could also run the Drang, which again, you get from running those exotic missions. So another shout out, if you haven't been running those exotic missions, make sure you do that. Either one of these two will give you the ability to pierce the barrier shields if you're going to be going into an activity where you face all three champions. Or if you're just going into general content, you can also put on the Amit or the BXR Battler. The BXR Battler would probably be second up on this list if I'm not worried about barrier champs, simply for the fact that just like in Callus, it does have incandescent, and not only that, but as a bonus, you get the Demolitionist perk, which will give you your grenade back even faster. So just something to consider. Of course, there's going to be people out there that find running double special attractive. Just make sure you mod your armor so that you're not running out of ammo, or you're just being smart with it. So again, you're not running out of special ammo. In the heavy slot, we're going to be taking Briar's Contempt, of course, from the Root of Nightmares raid. So shout out to people who have not done that raid and are wondering, hey, what kind of weapons can I get from there that are good this season? Briar's Contempt fits the bill. I've routinely used this on the final boss of Warlord's Ruin, even when Solar was not a surge, and done absolutely absurd amounts of damage. So not only are we going to be using the Scepter for our main portion of the damage, when we're exhausted with that ammo, we're going to pull out Briar's Contempt, take advantage of the artifact, and not to mention Reconstruction and Focus Fury, so I never have to reload, and dealing half the magazine as precision damage grants this weapon bonus damage for an improved duration. So if you're hitting your precision damage shots, which is not hard because this thing does not have much kick. Oh, by the way, it's got a 500 charge time and a 6-round magazine that'll double to 12, plus a recoil direction of 100. Yeah, this weapon is 100% worth your effort to try and go get. So if you guys haven't been doing Root of Nightmares, or you haven't completed the weapons from the Root of Nightmares raid, make sure you start finding fire teams, finding buddies, finding friends, and just taking the time to do that. Clearing it once a week is really all you need to do unless it's in rotation. Then, of course, I recommend you farm the boss. If you don't have Briar's Contempt and you're like, well, this build is a bust for me, it absolutely is not. You can also run with Dune Petitioner. Reconstruction Precision Instrument is ridiculously good as well. And you can roll with the good old Taipan 4FR. Put on triple tap and fireline and make sure you're near your buddies when you are shooting this at the boss, which in Court of Blades or raid or harder endgame activity anyways, that's not going to be hard to do. You guys are probably all huddled together, taking buffs from one another, whether that's bolt charge or healing rifts or whatever. So the Taipan really does fit the bill here. Last but not least, Eyes Unveiled, Overflow and Reservoir Burst is a good combination, but there's a lot of combinations that are good with this linear fusion rifle. So either way, oh, and you can put on Power Resolve as well. Either way you go, you can't really go wrong as long as you're using linear fusion rifle, because again, we're going to be taking advantage of the artifact, and again, this is going to double down on our main boss damage weapon that's consuming your super anyway. So anything that you do with this power weapon or with these power weapons is going to be icing on the cake to the cake that you already created when you just took out a huge chunk of the boss. For your helmet, go ahead and spec into whatever general mod that you need. Depending on the activity, you may want to run a heavy ammo finder and a special ammo finder. At bare minimum, you're going to want to run a special ammo finder. So if you want your super back even quicker and you're like, you know what, I'm running quarter blades, I get those heavy boxes after each round, I don't need the heavy ammo finder, I'm just farming weapons, or I just really like quarter blades or whatever, go ahead and put on something like Dynamo, Ashes to Assets, well, maybe not Ashes to Assets, but Dynamo or Hands-On, and either way you go, you're going to get your super back even faster on top of what you're already doing. You could theoretically already, put a stasis siphon on in place of this, but I'm not really using the trace rifle to clear ads. Every once in a while, I'll use it to take down a major, but I want to try to conserve my special ammo for that weapon. So if I really find myself in need, I will just pull out my heavy weapon and waste that yellow bar in a couple of shots and not feel like I'm missing out on damage when it comes damage time. But at minimum, regardless of anything else, make sure you put on your solar siphon so that you can generate orbs of power and get some ability energy back very quickly. Osmiomancy gloves. Fervig Cold Snap. Your Cold Snap grenades have an additional charge that recharges quicker on hits. The Seeker spawn from Cold Snap grenades travels farther. So I had to make a decision when I was making this build on what I wanted my exotic armor to be. It didn't make sense to run like Spirit of Harmony or Inmost simply because my goal was to be able to use stasis to my advantage and take advantage of the artifact on top of it. The easiest way to do that is what I thought was being able to freeze the battlefield at a moment's notice. And if there were other enemies that came after that, that didn't get hit by my Cold Snap grenade, I had an additional charge to chuck out there and deal additional shatter damage to all of them, thereby doing more area of effect damage. And I get it. You're probably thinking, Durf, stasis was so last season, you're just wasting your time. Well, yes and no. It was, but with the artifact, which we're going to get to, this only is going to compound what we're going to be able to build on when it comes to doing damage. And that's the main thing. Can we do anything with the artifact and our super that may be out of the ordinary that can do damage and also do amazing crowd control? Your Threadling Grenade is not always going to kill the enemies that it hits. So what's better than killing the enemies that it hits or whittling all 10 of them down to basically ribbons? Well, unless you're going to kill them all right away, they're still going to come at you. But if you freeze them and shatter them, you have a way to stop them altogether. So Osmiomancy fits the bill here. Go ahead and spec into whatever mod that you need to. Because we're going to be using a Cold Snap grenade, you do not need to put a firepower mod on. Instead, I recommend heavy-handed and impact deduction. Most importantly, put on a solar lower if you need it, but if you don't, you can put on a second impact deduction, or theoretically, you could put on a font if you have the space to account for that. Either way you go, you're back in the fight much quicker, whether that's using your grenade to freeze more enemies, using your melee to generate that orbs of power, or reloading your solar weapon to get back to laying lead into your enemies. For the chest armor, whatever general mod that you need, 2 damage resistance mods, so make sure you check the bill before you load into your activity, and then stasis reserves is what we want. Not many times are you going to hear me say that you're going to want to spec into special ammo reserves over your heavy ammo slot. But the fact of the matter is that's just what we're doing here. We're going to be able to generate our super in an obscene amount of time in certain situations. So the easiest way to make sure that you don't run out of ammo, because again, trace rifles are 1,000 rounds a minute, which means it doesn't take that long to go through 100 rounds or more, is to make sure you got the reserves mod on point. You could also double this if you're just running general content and you want to use the trace rifle more, but this is built to put out some power, so at bare minimum, put on one reserve mod. If you are going into an activity where you have to mod yourself for solar, arc, and void, or 3 different energy elements, hey, it is what it is. Go ahead and drop this off and put on what you got to do just to get through to the end of the activity. But I recommend putting on the reserves. It's just nice to have. For the legs, whatever general mod that you need to get your stats where they need to be, I recommend Innervation and Double Absolution if you can fit it. You could also take advantage of the Stasis Weapon Surge or the Solar Weapon Surge. Either way you go, you can't go wrong. As long as you have an Arbor Charge, you're winning. Or you can go over here and put on the Harmonic Scavenger, or I guess you could put on the Solar Scavenger, although that wouldn't really make sense considering I just talked to you about the Stasis Reserves. So I'd recommend putting on the Stasis Scavenger so that you get bonus Stasis rounds when you pick up an ammo brick. But because it's special ammo, you're going to be getting ammo bricks a little bit more regularly than heavy ammo. So I don't really think it's super necessary to do this, especially if you're doing something other than a very slow moving activity like a Master Lost Sector or an Expert Lost Sector. Anything that's got a general amount of enemies, you're going to be getting those special bricks, so I'm not even worried about that. But the Absolution is nice, as well as Innervation, being able to slow down enemies more frequently. I'm telling you, once you get used to the build, that Cold Snap Grenade is going to be super useful. Yeah, you might not be damaging a lot of enemies, but freezing them and being able to shatter 10 enemies in a row, it's pretty nice to watch on screen. I'm not going to lie. It's very satisfying. So all you got to decide is if you want to put on a different mod for the third one, or, if you are going to be using a 4 energy general armor mod, you might not have the room anyways. So then you could always throw on like orbs of restoration if you're running out of space. Either way you go, can't go wrong. Last but not least, going to be the Warlock Bond, whatever general armor mod that you want. And then Font of Restoration, I highly recommend if you're going to be using Weaver's Call. But either way, you're diving to the ground with your Phoenix Dive, or if you opt to go with a Rift, getting your class ability back faster, it's a win-win for everyone, including yourself. And your main goal is to try to stay alive during boss damage phase. So Font of Restoration is nice because you get your class ability back, which means if you're using Phoenix Dive, you can cure yourself. Or if you're using the Healing Rift, you get your Healing Rift back even quicker. Go ahead and round it off with a Bomber and a Reaper. Reaper is nice because, of course, you get that Orb of Power that powers Font of Restoration. And Bomber is nice simply because I want to be able to freeze more enemies more often. Oh, and by the way, you can slow down the boss when you use Cold Snap Grenades as well. Not for an obscene amount of time, but just enough that maybe you can get a reload in or switch to another weapon and continue the carnage when they break free of the slow. Okay, so this is going to be the bread and butter of this build and how we're going to generate an obscene amount of super energy as well as everything else that we were talking about. In the first column, we're going to be going with Unstoppable Fusion, Piercing Sidearms, and Overload Trace Rifles. Of course, Piercing Sidearms is going to be if you are going to be facing all 3 champs and you need to be able to deal with barriers and you don't want to use Passive Dawn, put on a Piercing Sidearm and you're good to go. In the second column, we're going to go with Vile Weave. Targets hit by your tangles are severed, reduced tangle cooldown by picking one up. This is imperative because we're going to be using Arcane Needle, and occasionally we're going to get those threadlings we're going to be able to chuck at enemies. So win-win for everyone. Next up is going to be Beam Medic. Rapid Trace Rifle Final Blows heal you and nearby allies. Powerful combatants increase the amount. Now, when you use that Trace Rifle on a boss and the boss has surrounding enemies, you're going to be regularly dealing shatter damage to the area when you leave this beam on its full charge state. So theoretically, you can get Rapid Trace Rifle Final Blows, and as you're doing that, you're going to be healing yourself as you're doing damage to the boss. So you get a little bit of a kickback just for using the Trace Rifle in its empowered state anyways. So just something to think about. In the third column, I recommend Dielectric and Elemental Siphon. Dielectric is nice because when you defeat arc debuff targets, you're going to get yourself some bolt charge. So I leave this on because switching between this and Lightning Surge, you get that bolt charge. Eventually you can get the lightning strikes and all of that. So put Dielectric on, and experiment with those two different aspects. As I said, you could substitute in and out, figure out which ones work better for you. And if it does end up being the lightning surge, you'll be happy that you have dielectric on, because there'll be one less thing you got to mod after you discover what you like most. Now, elemental siphon. We're going to talk about this for 30 seconds. Somebody start a timer. Of course, I'm just kidding. Rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super creates an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. Boost. Elemental pickups grant matching super energy when they are collected. So this is why I have the stasis super equipped. When I use this weapon, that trace rifle, to kill enemies, and I generate stasis shards, when this is boosted, when I pick up those shards, not only am I going to be getting my melee energy and frost armor, on top of that, I'm going to be getting super energy back to myself as well. So with that in mind, now you have a decision to make on whether you're going to be running Storm Trance or Winter's Wrath. Again, for some, that might not be a difficult decision. For others who want to spam the super more often so that they can use the empowered state of the trace rifle, hey, that's the nature of the game. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Sometimes you got to decide. I opted to go with the stasis super simply because I'm using a solar weapon, so I'm getting melee energy. Fire sprites give me grenade energy, and frost armor gives me melee energy as well. So I'm always going to have my arcane needle, and I do enough with this weapon as well as my solar weapon to generate enough transcendence energy to be transcendent on pretty much every boss that you come across, even in a rapid boss production like the Court of Blades. So it's a nice balance, but I think you're really going to have to decide what you want to use more. I guess theoretically you could always go, you could spec heavily into arc. However, then you're going to have other things that you got to worry about. So we're just going to assume that you're going to have the solar weapons on for this conversation. But you could, I guess, twist this into an arc energy and arc heavy weapon. But again, it's going to be modded different. Maybe I can do a video in the future now that I'm thinking about it in real time. Maybe I can do the arc version of this video in the future as well. So if you want to see that, go ahead and comment. Say, hey, do the flip side of this. You're running solar. Show me arc. Let's see what the difference is and let me decide. Or I guess void too. But yeah, let me know. Next, we get up to harsh refraction. This is where that trace rifle is going to shine insanely. Trace rifles do more damage to targets afflicted by elemental debuffs matching their element type. So as this weapon sits on a boss, and this thing is shattering and reshattering and reshattering the boss over and over and over again in its empowered state, not only are you generating an obscene amount of damage, once that buff runs out and you just keep using the trace rifle, it's still going to do additional damage. Oh, and by the way, because it's an exotic, it's going to give you absurd amounts of super energy back on top of it, not counting the elemental siphon that you're going to be taking advantage of. So when you get done with this, you're going to see that your super will be sitting somewhere between 50 to 80% full already once you get done, especially in the Court of Blades. So it is a really nice quality of life that many people don't know about. I mean, enough people know about it. It's not like I'm the first person to figure this out. I'm not, recreating the wheel here. But for those who haven't really messed around with stasis or are just getting into the game or maybe think, well, stasis is dead this season, I'm not even going to waste my time. This is your wake-up call that you can definitely take advantage of certain aspects. And because trace rifles are meta, I guess I'll use that word, you can take advantage of this and harsh refraction. Oh, and add in the beam medic. I mean, this column right here, I said it when Act 2 came out, it is insanely valuable, and there's a lot of different ways you can use it, and this is just one more way. I also have Horde Shuttle and Flashover. Flashover makes sense because I want to get amplified when or if I get maximum stacks of bolt charge. And then Horde Shuttle, of course, thread links sever targets that they damage. Kind of a no-brainer if I'm going to be using Weaver's Call. In the final column, I got Particle Reconstruction. That is specifically for my Briar's Contempt. And last but not least, I've got 2 shreds. Dealing sustained damage to severed targets unravels them. Defeating a severed target creates a hotspot of strand energy, granting woven mail to nearby allies for a short duration. The boost is unraveling projectiles deal increased damage. These deal further damage, increased damage to severed targets. So the ability to have frost armor and woven mail at the same time, I mean, I can't even calculate what kind of damage resistance that's going to be, but it's going to be almost close to 100% damage resistance, increased damage resistance. So why not take advantage of that? Yes, I understand we're not using a strand weapon, but that doesn't matter if you're generating threadlings and you're using your arcane needle, which again is why I'm using arcane needle and Weaver's Call. But again, if you guys want to see the varied up version of this build, arc and or void, I can make that happen. But guys, let me know in the comments, because I don't want to just make a whole video for just one little change to a build, unless people really want to see how you can spec into it and make huge damage numbers with the other elements. So that is the build. So one of the reasons that I would recommend you try this build is, number 1, stasis is not dead. Number 2, it is a solar surge week. Well, at least it is when I'm making this video. I don't know if it's going to be by the time that you're seeing the video, but either way, being able to freeze the battlefield, take advantage of the roaming super regen buff, and being able to use a weapon like the scepter over here to deal huge damage in a very short amount of time, as though it is a heavy burst damage weapon when it's not, is part of the reason that trace rifles are so high on everybody's list now. Now, this isn't going to be as powerful as, let's say, Microcosm, and even then it's going to be close. But having the ability to spam this weapon with special ammo and know that with a basic primary ammo weapon, you can generate a bunch of special ammo breaks without very much effort, makes this a very attractive build, especially for those who like this to super spam and who don't completely want to let go of stasis from last season. So, and of course, as you're using this, you know, when you freeze targets, hey, I mean, that does also take care of champs as well, on top of it intrinsically dealing with overloads. So, you know, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I don't know if I would say this build is ready to be taken into a jam. There's a couple of things, you know, that you would have to negotiate when dealing with enemies of that magnitude. But for just about everything else, I mean, this thing does do pretty darn good damage, and the difficulty it would take for you to get or at least mimic the weapons I have here plus the scepter here, I mean, you guys can make it work. You know, I got a lot of great suggestions from my channel just on builds in general. So I know you guys that are watching my channel, you like to build, you like to experiment, you like to try new things out. This is going to be no different. You probably have this sitting in your vault. Go ahead and use an upgrade module and, you know, upgrade it to something of, you know, respectable power, and then figure it out here. You know, I gave you 4 options for power weapons. I gave you some other options for solar weapons. Either way you go, you can get the gist of the build, even if you can't perfectly mimic it, and still do amazing damage if you are building into this weapon right here. Anyways, guys, if you did find anything helpful with this video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. I, of course, will have a dim link in the description. Also, if you guys are looking for a non-toxic gamer community or centered around Destiny, my Discord, which I'll have a link in the description as well. My Discord is, you know, slowly but surely growing nicely. Got a lot of great people in there, a lot of good-hearted people in there. No toxicity whatsoever. Of course, you guys know I wouldn't tolerate that anyways, because otherwise, why would I be having a channel about helping people in the first place? But either way, if you guys are looking for additional help, you guys can get at me in my Discord in the comments. Or if you're looking for community gamers, let's say you don't really have a clan, or you know, maybe you're in a dead clan, you know, just looking for some pals to goof off with, you know, doing strikes or nightfalls or, you know, dares of eternity or whatever you like to do. There's people in there that will absolutely run with you. People are doing catalyst runs for things. People are doing, you know, dungeons. It's a really great community, and it's slowly but steadily getting bigger, and more participation is always welcome. So shout out to my Discord. Shout out to my members as well. You guys are pushing my channel out there, and that's what's helping it grow as well. So to my Discord and my members, I really appreciate your guys' support and making it a great channel and, of course, community. All right, I'm not going to lie, guys. I miss showing you guys sorrows. But in the effort of showing you guys how powerful this build is. I've got another little highlight video that I'm going to show you with some damage numbers afterwards. Like I said, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Hopefully this build finds you well. I'm going to switch over to this next little bit right now. Okay, so one final thing that I forgot to touch on in the initial video is if you're dealing with a boss like this boss right here, the Cal Echo, and you are using your trace rifle to deal the bulk of your damage, if you have a swirly boss that disappears, or maybe you have a slow damage phase, when that boss moves on, you can long press again and switch out of that high damage state, and wherever your super bar is, that's where it starts from. So you can see between those first two transitions, I went from 100% super bar to about a 65%. It was a little bit longer damage phase than some bosses out there, and the boss, of course, is less swirly than normal. But that's just one thing that I want to make sure that I touched on, and I forgot to, so I apologize. Don't hit me too hard in the comments for that. But just another way that this build absolutely wrecks, guys. So I hope you guys like this build. I hope it finds you well. Join my Discord if you're looking for that non-toxic gaming community. Like and subscribe. And I know this is just prophecy, but come on, look at that damage. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.